of the Western Alliance. Now, as to your the other question, which was directed to the rock-solid support in the context of the expulsion of an Israeli diplomat, which you would wish to say shame to, and I would invite everyone here to consider the context. The reason I spoke in my talk about fleeting events not being allowed to determine whether or not there is some rock-solid support is because it is just that, a fleeting event. And I would remind everyone here, in case you've forgotten, that the Howard government expelled an Israeli diplomat in 2004. Happily, it was a fleeting event. I was concerned, I was troubled at the time that there be an expulsion of an Israeli diplomat, but I did not suggest at that time that it marked some breach of the relationship, and nor does the request for the withdrawal of an Israeli diplomat on this occasion indicate anything other than what I described in my remarks as a brief strain to the relationship. What I would ask everyone here to consider is the context. And that context, and this is not me talking, it's not the Prime Minister talking, but that context was very, very directly explained by Dennis Richardson, who is the permanent head of the Department of Foreign Affairs. He's the senior serving Australian Foreign Affairs official. He's been an ambassador to Washington and the Director General of ASIO in 2004-05. Dennis gave evidence in the Senate Foreign Affairs Estimates hearings on Wednesday night last week, and I just wanted to read to you what he has said. It could not have been more direct. He said that some matters took place in 2004, which we spoke to the Israeli authorities directly about at the time. A memorandum of understanding that was entered into between an Israeli agency and an Australian agency has been breached. And then went on to say, against this background, I am more than confident that the action that has been taken in expelling an Israeli diplomat was totally appropriate. What this action marks is Australian disapproval of the misuse of Australian passports. And no one should be in any doubt about that this was misuse of Australian passports. What it does is to put Australian travellers at risk across the world. It increases the scrutiny of any Australian traveller, exposing them to searching both of baggage and of persons. It makes travel for every Australian more difficult, and if a direct statement is not made by the Australian government, will lead to the conclusion being drawn by countries across the world that Australia is prepared to have its passports used by other of its allies, including Israel, for any purpose at all, which is something the Australian government cannot tolerate. There were some peculiar letters in the Australian Jewish News last week which suggested that Australia should have done nothing or should have said nothing. It was too late for that. The government of Dubai published this event, including the photographs of the Australian citizens involved, and there was no prospect of keeping this event secret. In the context of Israel having previously engaged in this kind of conduct, which is what Dennis Richardson was talking about, and in the context of a breach of a confidential understanding, some action had to be taken. And what I fear from your question is that you are confusing approval or disapproval of the targeted killing of the Hamas operative in Dubai with the action that the government has taken in relation to passports. You have not heard one word, no one here has heard a word from the Prime Minister, from the Foreign Minister, from any minister in the Australian government, and nor will you, of criticism of the targeted killing of the Hamas operative. And that is because the Australian government believes that Israel is required in its security interest to undertake that kind of action from time to time. And perhaps I could add to that, Australian troops serving now in Afghanistan are involved in just the same kind of action in the combat against the Taliban, except that generally speaking the killings are carried out by the American forces. So do not confuse.